Bill married the neighbor he was cheating with, and now they're harassing me to make their triplet daughters the flower girls at my wedding even though I already promised my cousins. Hello, everyone. I, 25F, am getting married to my fiancé, Jackson, 25M, this year in August. When I was 5, I met my husband when I was in the woods near a Catholic church he attended near my house. I found him lost and I guess we just never stopped hanging out since then, and I'm glad for that. Anyways, my husband has 5 siblings. John, 35M. Jessica, 32F. Jacob, 30M, Joy, 27F, and Janice, 15F. For clarification, this story is about my eldest Bill, John. His ex-wife, Grace, 34F, had 2 kids together, Julia, 13F, and Peter, 10M. Well, when I was 16, Grace's parents were tragically killed in the alleyway while walking together for quality time around sunset and were both mugged. I won't get into the details, but the aftermath was devastating. Sure, the killer got life in prison, but Grace was devastated. So devastated that she was placed in the mental ward since she had a horrible mental snap. She was in there for a year when John served her with divorce papers. Why? Well, after only 2 damn months of Grace being in the mental ward, he had started an affair with their single neighbor, Paige, 35F. This only drove Grace further down her spiral and she is still in there to this day, 9 years later. John and Paige rushed to get married, only 6 months after John's divorce was final. I was so angry because I knew how deeply he hurt not only Grace, but Julia and Peter. I've known them both since they were born and always saw them like family. My parents found out and didn't want me visiting them anymore, but I just couldn't because I felt like I'd be leaving them behind. Well, 3 years into their marriage, they got pregnant with 3 triplet girls. After the girls were born, Peter was paid more attention to since he was such a good big brother now. However, Julia was showed to the side. I was pissed because John was basically replacing her with his 3 new girls. Julia spent countless nights with me at my parents' house since I was 19, but my parents allowed me to stay home for college to save money on housing. Needless to say, I never fought for a relationship or tried to talk to John or Paige whenever I visited Julia and Peter, mostly to take them out to get out of that hellhole. Fast forward to 2 years ago, Jackson proposed. It was a sweet moment because it was where we had our first date and it was absolutely magical. We knew we shouldn't get married too early since we were only 23 at the time. I did accept the proposal, but we still needed some time. We announced our engagement when it happened and only friends and family contacted us. Julia and Peter did, but never John or Paige reach out. Now that we're planning to get married this year in August, we started to really delve into planning for the past few months. One day, I was reviewing the venue for the color scheme me and Jackson wanted with my mom when my phone rang. I didn't pick it up at first because it was in the kitchen while I was in the living room, so couldn't reach it in time. However, when it rang again, I was surprised to see it was Paige. When I picked up, she made small talk. I play along until the topic of the wedding came up. She then asked about who the flower girl would be and she soon asked if her 3 triplet girls, 6F, could fill the roles. Despite them being pretty old, 2 younger cousins of mine have always wanted to be the flower girls and I promised them that they could when I first announced my engagement. I didn't plan to break that promise and I told Paige that I couldn't do that since I made my promise to my cousins already. Paige immediately berated me and long story short, she hung up super pissed. Later that night, Jackson and I were in bed when I told him what happened. Jackson said not to worry about it since she can't do anything about it since she had her wedding already and this is ours. I nodded and smiled and we left it at that. Now for the past month, I've been getting bombarded on Facebook and basically all social media and my phone number by Paige, John, and their friends and family for me not giving them what their daughters wanted. Especially Jessica, eldest sister in their family. I wasn't surprised because when I was 16, she got pregnant with her sister's boyfriend and they got married when their affair daughter was a year old. May make a separate post regarding that shit show. But with all the harassment I'm getting, I'm starting to think I may be the a-hole. Besides, I want my wedding day to make sure everyone is in good spirits and go into my marriage with a good head. So I just wanted to come here and ask Ida for not letting my eldest Bill's triplet daughters be my 3 flower girls. Edit, I think I should also add some vital info. So first off, John is a corporate lawyer with a lot of connections, so I'm not sure if threatening him to leave me alone or anything like that would help like someone mentioned. Also, I saw and replied to a comment that implied I had a grudge against the triplets. I'll add it here and say I don't have anything against the triplets. It's ridiculous to blame them for existing when they didn't ask for it, nor ask for such horrible people for parents. I'm also seeing blocking on FB and social media. I've done that and I'm considering changing my number, but I have to get some affairs in order before I can. mostly letting family members and trustworthy friends know. Also, my parents know about this and are trying to help best they can. I've also alerted my future in-laws about this and they said they'd talk to John and Paige. One thing to also mention is that my in-laws cut John off after what he did to Grace, but re-established contact when the triplets were born. Understandable, since at the end of the day, they are their grandchildren despite what their parents have done. Update 1. First of all, I'd like to thank you for all the messages and comments on the last post. I never thought this would get a lot of attention, let alone a small amount of it. So just to update you all, I followed much advice and I have blocked many of John and Paige's family that were blasting me. Also, I have seen that Jackson should stick up to his brother. He has done that. However, John simply doesn't listen to anyone. Could be because he finds himself entitled not to for being the eldest sibling or being a lawyer, not sure, but my future in-laws did talk to him and threatened him for me that he won't be allowed into the wedding. While that was a bit invasive of them to make that threat without my acknowledgement, I'm glad they did, since John would more likely listen to them than to me. But that's not entirely what this update is about. As I mentioned in my previous post, I mentioned that I picked up Julia to get away from her toxic household. Well, last time I was there, last night, so we could go night driving, John's triplet girls, who are all 6, rushed up to me and told me they were so excited to be a huge play in the wedding. I was confused and immediately realized that Paige wouldn't look at me. I didn't want to confront her and gently tried to tell the girls that while I appreciate their enthusiasm, I already had flower girls in mind. It took a couple of minutes and surprisingly, they took it well. I was confused but decided to leave it at that. I took Julia and we had a nice drive. We went to the park and we just hung out and talked on a bench. I asked her pretty bluntly and not really expecting an answer if the triplets ever really wanted to be a part of the wedding. This was a surprise to Julia because she knew I was getting married, but didn't really think the triplets wanted to be a big part, nor have they talked about it to her or Peter. I was even more confused and decided to try and talk to John when I saw him. When I dropped Julia off, I tried to talk to John, but Paige said to me to pee is off. Like what? What did I do? When I got home, I waited for Jackson to be in bed. It's our safe space to always talk. I didn't want to talk to my parents since they're both busy and stressed with house renovations and my grandma's heart health, so didn't want to put them under more pressure. When I told Jackson, he said that he too was contacted by John during the time I was out with Julia that I needed to do this. The crazy thing is, neither of us even know why. Jackson said that he'd again tell his parents to deal with it. This morning, I woke up and decided to call out of work to just have a mental day to myself, and I just got back from walking around the mall and getting coffee. I got some plushies I found cute to decorate the bed. Anyways, no word yet, so I'm just gonna try and get as much mental breaks when I can when I'm not worried about this, work, and the wedding and some family issues aside from this. I'll update when I get any clarification on why so badly John and Paige want their daughters to be in the wedding so badly. Update 2. Hi, again. Before going into the update, I do want to address something. I saw a comment saying my fiancé needs to stick up for me and confront John on his own. While I do agree that Jackson should stick up for me, John just won't listen to any of his siblings that don't agree with him, no matter how wrong he is. The only reason my future Mill and Phil can get to him is most likely because they're his parents and now how to get him to listen better. I don't know and really don't care to know. All that matters is that they can get through to him. Now for the update. So just last night, I got the whole story. I won't dive into it, but to the people who said Paige was using the girls as a way to be accepted into the family, congratulations. You win the grand prize for being absolutely correct. Paige and John also said it wasn't fair that only Julia was getting to be a bridesmaid. She is, by the way, in case some people were hoping she would be, while their triplets don't have any significant role. Well, again, I have a much better connection with Julia and Peter than I do the triplet girls. So yeah. Guess who is fully blocked and uninvited from the wedding? Also, just this morning, Jackson himself told them they were uninvited before blocking them on both his and my devices since I was still asleep and he goes to work before me. I also had to block Jessica, might make a full story on her and why she's also basically estranged, because she was berating me and calling me callous and cruel for punishing 3 little girls. I just blocked her since after reading countless comments, I know I'm not the a-hole and that talking to her won't do any good for me. So, blocked too. I'm also following some advice and will look into extra security personnel for the wedding so John and Paige don't try to come. I don't know why it took internet strangers to tell me to block them to finally go through with, but glad I did since I guess just my older brother telling me wasn't really working. Anyways, thank you all so much for advice and your comments and I'll be sure to update after the wedding. Update 3. Hello all. This isn't the biggest update. So, my fiancé is no longer my fiancé. He is now my husband. We got married just yesterday and now we're in our new home planning to go to our honeymoon next week. The wedding itself went wonderful. I didn't find out anything about John, Paige, even about Jessica and Tim, my issues with them on my profile. Thankfully, I follow your guys' great advice of giving the security a password to ensure they can't come in. Also, I was able to get Julia and Peter to the wedding thanks to the help of my now Mill and Phil. Love to be able to see all them that. Julia was a bridesmaid and we let Peter help with the music since he is pretty tech savvy. Don't know if I said that in one of my last updates. Haha, I also finally got into contact with Grace. Yay, I haven't been able to do that with all the wedding prep and the family drama, so it was nice to talk to her. I asked her if she wished to attend, but she said she didn't know if she was ready to come into the outside world, but would love videos and photos. I was sad, but understood where she was coming from since she was in the mental institution she is at right now for nearly 10 years at this point. I also want to help her get parental rights over Julia and Peter since the kids deserve their mother in their life, their real mother who actually care about them and not just for appearances. She is on board and now got this in my hands. Also, people who are wondering about if John and Paige tried to intervene, they did, but as I said, security did wonderful to keep them out. But when me and Jackson were now in our marital bed, I got a text from a different number and realized I was in a group chat now between John, Paige, Jessica, and Tim. I didn't bother to read any of the messages, but then saw a couple that had Jessica exploiting secret things I told her growing up since we were close. I blocked them all again, but was upset since she was talking about bad ancestors, bad live family members, mistakes I made, etc. I thought I'd be super pissed, but I was just indifferent when I saw the message since I don't really care about those things anymore. Anyways, that's the update for now. Don't know if I'll update again, I might since this whole wedding might lead to bigger family drama. But in case I don't, thank you all for listening to my rant and giving me advice on this matter. Edit, hey y'all. Just a small edit, but we just arrived in Brussels. We'll be here for about 2 weeks. We plan to spend the first week and a half together and spend the last few days with Jackson's mom's side of the family the last few days. I'll have my notifications off except messages and whatnot and we'll be back during the nighttime hours when I can and not too tired. Update 4, hey, guys. It's been a while since I last posted here. Just a quick sum up of what's been going on lately. Grace is being reevaluated for her medications and treatment with the possibility of being released and Phil managed to find a great lawyer for her to rearrange the custody. But that's however, is not what this update is about. Back 2 weeks ago, me and Jackson were in my parents' house while they took my grandma out of state to see my mom's younger brother and his family. While I was cooking and Jackson was in the living room trying to fix something with the TV, that's when the doorbell rang. I looked through the cameras. I saw it was Paige. Jackson went to the door and slightly opens it with the chain on. Paige was screaming and crying, asking if we were happy her life was falling apart. Despite my better judgment, we brought her into the house since I didn't want her to make a scene for any neighbors to see. I sat her down and tried to relax her a bit with some water. She downed half the bottle before she wiped her eyes. I was angry because why did she have the audacity to do this? Come to my parents' property to talk to us? Paige soon told us why she was there. She told us that after our wedding, she and John had a huge fight where so many things were said. Paige was told that she was the biggest mistake in John's life, how he hated her and wished she was never his neighbor, etc. She said he also regretted having their 3 girls since that seemed to also damage his relationship with Julia and Peter. Despite what I have said on here, John really was a good dad to them until he forced them all to be one big family with his new kids while also pushing Julia to the side? That didn't make any sense to me. She said John told her she was the reason why he was so estranged from his family and whatnot. She also confessed that this has always been the case. John would verbally abuse her ever since they got married and only had kids with her, hoping that would soften his family to him again. I was baffled and so was Jackson. I now had a guess that Paige was only the way she was because of the abuse she suffered by John. There was a lot more said, but Jackson ended up suggesting some therapists to her since she clearly had a lot to figure out. That's why I love Jackson so much. Despite this woman doing so much to us, he still was willing to help her. Paige then left, her daughters were being left under the care of Julia and Peter. I don't know what's going to happen now. But one thing I know for sure is that I want Paige to get out of that marriage. Not just for her, but for the triplets since they are innocent in all of this and they're just 6. I am also hoping that Julia and Peter are taken away from John's care whether or not he is abusing them or not because for all we know, he's seriously sick in the head. Edit to make, I want to confirm that I don't 100% trust Paige on this. So I am taking what she said at face value. However, not really at the same time because if what she is saying turns out to be true, I want her to get the life out this situation any way that I can. Update 5. So, It's been another 2 months since my last update and things have gotten interesting. I found out from my Phil that Paige was actually being verbally abused by John. However, she's not any better. How does my Phil know this? The triplets tell him in a fashion that's like Mama and Papa always yell mean things at each other. So that's enough proof for that. But I highly doubt they're going to get divorced since they want to put on a strong front for everyone, despite them being known for cheaters. On a positive note, Grace has been cleared to leave the mental hospital. She's been staying with Joy, my Sil, and her husband while Grace gets back in her feet and gets used to normal life. Julia and Peter met her at my in-laws' house. It was super emotional from what I have been told by my husband, who was there. Before people ask why they were allowed to see Grace, my in-laws do have John's permission to take them sometimes like I do. 2 nights ago I went to go see Grace and she looks better than ever. She is at a healthy weight, she was very skinny before, and looks a lot more happy than she has been in a while. The custody reevaluation has started just 3 weeks ago, so that's still ongoing so that Grace can have custody with the kids. Me and my husband are also doing well. He started to be more involved with the kids now that he is taking a semester off from medical school to be with the family more. This is the reason why he wasn't as involved as I was, because he was busy with medical school. So, not the most eventful update, but hopefully things will get better. I will update when the custody agreement has been finalized.